it's funny to go back and listen to some of the episodes that you and I have done, or some of the episodes I've done with Sally Norton over the years. We've done 3 or 4 different episodes, and you would think covering this one topic, there would be so much crossover between all the episodes that we've done, and they're all unique. Like, we find something new to talk about every single time. And so it's very interesting. I learn something new every single time that we chat. And of course, this is going to be speculation, but I want to hear your opinion about this. For what percentage of the population do you think oxalate is an issue for, that is going unrecognized?
Back to when in doubt, blame oxalate. Like, we have all kinds of epidemic inflammatory conditions out there. I'm now in my 60s, not that I like to own up to that too often, but like, all my friends are dealing with, it might be cancer, or it might be chronic asthma, or it seems like everybody I know in their 60s is taking high blood pressure medication or something, right? And the more I look at the systems that are being affected, lungs, cardiovascular, there's oxalate touch points there. So, and we've got, of course, the obesity epidemic, and the most recent rabbit hole I was down was looking at how our metabolic health, so our status is, either syndrome X or prediabetes or diabetes, affects your risk of things like kidney stones. So kidney stones being one of the most common ways that people are dealing with oxalate. And oh my gosh, that just sends your oxalate risk up really high. So it's not just what's in our diet either, it's what our body might be producing. And there might be something about diabetes, prediabetes, blah, 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 that drives up our oxalate production, our natural oxalate production. So when you look at the population being, what are we at, like 80% of us are overweight or obese? I mean, it's so I don't even like, I'm afraid to say a number because I'm afraid of how high the number would be that I'd be saying. But if you just look at the SAD diet, right? The one that nobody really wants anybody to be eating, but where your basic starches would be things like potatoes, and it's very low in nutrients, but you've got and the replacement to regular potatoes is now sweet potato fries. So you've got these things which are really high in oxalate with a nutrient deprived kind of diet. I think that sets just about everybody up for it. And then you find people trying to eat better. And as we've talked about before, if you're doing everything right and you're getting sicker, that might be oxalate, because maybe you've gone out to put all these superfoods in your diet. So your quinoa, if you're not eating regular wheat, and your sweet potato instead of your potato, and your spinach for your greens, and your chia for your fiber, and all of a sudden, oh, and your almonds for a snack, and all of a sudden you're taking in 1,000, 1,500 milligrams of oxalate a day. And if you look at some of the resources on what we should consider a normal amount of oxalate for you to be excreting in urine per day, that would be, I think the Mayo Clinic had it at about 45 milligrams of oxalate in your urine. I'd have to check this to make sure, because some of these criteria are changing. But at one point, the Mayo Clinic for sure had 45 milligrams of oxalate in your urine per day could qualify you for hyperoxaluria. And you're taking in 1,500 a day. Like, so honestly, there's so many factors here that might be setting us up for problems with oxalate, and not the least of which is, we know now that antibiotics have huge impacts on the gut. And one of the things they're doing is generally the kinds of bacteria that degrade oxalate or use oxalate for their food that we would have in our gut, which would help to protect us from some of it. Well, if those are being killed off by antibiotics, then you're also more vulnerable. Just a crazy perfect storm of things, right?
It really is. Wow, it really is. And it's, fun to be in the nutrition world and squabble about what is the biggest harm. Is it the sugar? Is it the starch? Is it the seed oils? Is it the food dyes? like we can probably all agree that it might be all of those things. They might be acting together. But that the number that you mentioned, 45 grams, that's like a high end kind of maximum of what can be excreted through the urine.
I don't know if that's the high end maximum because I've had what they call a 24-hour urine assay for oxalate. I managed to talk my doctor into doing that despite the fact that I'd had no kidney stones. So he really didn't think that I had an oxalate problem at the time. Gosh, this is years ago now. And I went and I had one of those tests. And when I got back the results, I had 293 milligrams of oxalate in my
Wow.
daily urine. So it's not that 45 milligrams is the max. It's
Got
that
it.
at that point in time, it was the threshold whereby then they said, you've got too much oxalate in your urine. So something's going on. So if you pass that threshold at 45 milligrams, if a regular human being like me, who was trying to eat extra healthy, could do a random test like that and get 293, it then makes sense why my doctor said, I'm not sure about this because they're calling up to 300 milligrams normal. They're moving some of the, some of the goalposts because so many people throw these high numbers. But back in the day when the original threshold was set, it was set on it had to be on a much lower intake than what we've got now. But
Wow.
we've abandoned traditional ways of processing some food. I mean, honestly, we think that we're kind of smarter than previous generations, right? So my grandmother's, boiled spinach with a cream sauce. Oh, that's terrible. We eat it raw because it's better that way. Well, there's a lot more oxalate that way too. So we really have all kinds of things going on where just because oxalate's not tracked unless you have a kidney stone or unless your kidneys are failing, then they'll start to track oxalate. But until then, it's it's like the invisible factor in your health profile. And that's why, I say when in doubt, blame oxalate because we're not looking for that. It's kind of
Yeah.
like back in the day where everybody, didn't really think that cigarette smoking was that bad until we started to look at it, right? So I think we have the same problem with oxalate. We haven't been looking at it, so we didn't realize it was related to any of these things. But
Yeah.
honestly, yeah, there's more going on there than meets the eye.
Wow. I remember as a kid when like all of a sudden it was the potato skins. Like the potato skins were the healthiest part of the potato, and we wouldn't skin our potatoes anymore. And like you eat the skin because that's where all the nutrients were. I remember like, oh, this is different, but whatever. Let's throw some margarine in here and have a nice little baked potato with skin on. And I've always thought of it as such a cruel trick of oxalate that it's the people that you mentioned, right? It's the people that take the step to improve their health. They're finally conscious of it. They're sick of the standard American diet, the sad diet. And so they take steps to improve. And you see the spinach and you see the chia and the chard and all this stuff comes in. And, maybe they don't even like it. They don't like eating this stuff raw, but they do it because it's for their health. But the thing that I've been appreciating a lot more recently is kind of like you said when I asked the question, what percentage of people do you think this is bothering? Even that person on a standard American diet, not eating for their health, it's kind of interesting to think like how little of a tolerance for some of those foods, chocolate, potatoes, a few of those things per day in your diet, and you could be in just as much trouble and you're completely unaware of it. And yeah, even though you're not eating for health and not going out of your way to eat spinach, there's other ways that you can accumulate it pretty quick.
Oh, potato chips are probably one of the most common ones. Um, I know people who picked up chocolate covered almonds because they thought, well, chocolate's good for you, almonds are good for you. Yeah, that's like a double-barreled problem. Or they picked up dark chocolate, and the darker the chocolate, the more oxalate is present. So, yeah, it's the difficult thing here is that if you're not really paying attention, all kinds of things can be going on. And we just seem very committed to, things like chia being really good for us.